to you, Ali. Mike, I come to you first, and as you said with the internals, only slight declines on the surface, but a couple of other.
Okay, good afternoon. We'll get going in just a second. Looking at the day in the market, just a brutal day for me. But to those of you who've been following Amazon, I've had Amazon stock now for a while, and I watched it drop down. I am now positive on it. I was down over 300 on it, now positive on it. And it just shows you if you're buying stock, investing in stock, holding on to good companies works. It's a tried and true strategy, and it works all the time. And so, after sweating that one for quite some time, it's a nice bounce up. A lot of red today. So if you watched 60 Minutes last night, you heard about this issue with a company that had, don't have to go into the technicals of it, but a bunch of stocks, he defaulted. There was a margin call. He couldn't cover it. So some companies like CBS Viacom crashed. It went from literally over $100 to they're under 40 now. And so the other day I bought a bunch of it, but it kept dropping. So it's been a pretty bloodbath today because that interview was last night on 60 Minutes. So whatever. Not good, but I think that'll be good long term. In fact, tomorrow I will buy more Viacom. If you're following the stuff I have, I'll add to that position. I think that's a good company. I think it has a good streaming service coming out, and I think it has good prospects. So in any event, glad to be back. I know over the last 5-6 weeks, we've had issues with connections. Saturday, that should have been solved. We had Comcast out here, new wires to the poles, all new stuff went in. So we should be fine. There should not be any connection issues going forward. And that should eliminate the cancellations we were having. We just couldn't get on. It was the craziest thing. We'd be ready to go, click the button, and everything would freeze. And we should be better than that. Okay, so from a news standpoint, if you're in Brantford, we got the news today that the Jazz Festival is canceled, which is unfortunate. Remember last year we had no Jazz Festival either, but we ended up having some smaller bands on the green, which were a nice time. People stayed socially distant. It was a good thing. So hopefully the first selectman could do some of those things again. Also, part of the new budget that Brantford's working on includes increasing a position at the community house, at the Parks and Rec Department. And that's like a cultural liaison position. And it's a part-time position. They want to make it full-time. I don't think it's controversial. It passed the Board of Finance. But I'm going to just give you my take on why that should absolutely be a full-time position. And the person who's in that position is Colin Sheehan, who does a phenomenal job. Now, we don't determine jobs based on who's in it, right? We determine it based on the position. Is there a need for that position? But what Colin has done is brought something that he almost uniquely can bring in his experience in theater, working in theater all over his significant experience in theater, working with kids in day camps. I think in this time during COVID, it's absolutely necessary. So if you are someone who follows local government, I would urge you to let your representatives know to support that position. I think it's vital. We had all these kids sitting home for so long, and the emotional impact of that is a tough one. And if we can start increasing the amount of services we offer as a town, we offer far more than we ever did before. The last 4 or 5 years in Brantford has seen a drastic increase in offerings. I'm about to start a tennis class offered from the Parks and Rec Department. But especially for our kids, especially that position, and I brought that up because it was that position that helped get those bands last year. So Brantford won't have its famous jazz festival, but we have all these other bands, these things that can happen. The exact name of the position, hold on one second. I will tell you in a second. Alex sent me the information, and I'll read it to you. When did he send it? ALEX. One second, and I'll tell you. And if you are, call your representatives, let them know the support you have for this position. Arts, Culture, and Special Projects Coordinator. And I completely support that. I support Colin. I have seen firsthand the things he has done, the positive effect he's had, and the ability to get things done. And there are new, like 4 or 5 new positions in the budget this year. I'm going to go easy today because I know I've been very hard on Tom Brockett, rightfully so. He's not qualified to be first selectman, period. But he has been so almost bipolar when it comes to how he's treating. He talks about more infrastructure, and then he writes a letter to the Board of Finance saying, don't have any more infrastructure projects. He's full of crap. But the reason I bring that up is he pushed for decreased spending this year. Smart fiscal people, when you have opportunities where interest rates are low, where you have saved money, where you have a significant rainy day fund, undesignated fund is what we call it on town level. When you have that in place, it's during the crisis that you want to spend that money. It's during the crisis that you say to the taxpayers, this is why we saved it. And if you can increase services to make their life easier through that time or recovering from that time, that's what you do. This idea of, it sounds good politically, right? We have a crisis, we have COVID, so therefore let's stop spending. Smart people say there's a crisis, this is what we saved for. There's a crisis, interest rates are low, now's the time to do infrastructure projects. That's what smart people say. If you're just looking for political points and you don't know what you're talking about, you get Tom Brockett. If you get people who know what they're talking about, Jamie Cosgrove, Joe Mooney, Victor Casella, Jeff Follett, the people on the Board of Finance, Jim Finch, most of the members of the RTM that aren't listening to Tom Brockett, those people say, wait a minute, we have low interest rates, we have saved money, we have been prudent for forever, we're keeping our mill rate under 30, unlike our local towns around us. Now is the time to add to those services. So we've been doing this in a measured way coming up here. Far more open space, more services through Parks and Rec, what have you. Now's the time to continue that. That's what you saved for. You saved for the rainy day. If Corona is not a rainy day, then I don't know what is. And specifically this position, adding more theater, adding more recreation camps, adding more bands on the green, I think is a productive use of that money. It makes sense. He's not an expensive position. It makes sense. On top of that, I'm someone who firmly believes that the school system should be spending less on theater and more on financial literacy. So that being the case, I would rather see the town through its Parks and Rec department increase its theater, increase those activities for kids, and let the school system, and I'd love to see the Board of Ed do this, really focus on financial literacy. I've said this a million times. We could talk about equality, economic inequality, racial, whatever inequality we want to talk about. We are sending kids out into the world without knowing how the game is played. And so they get mad. And so kids that are from wealthier areas are taught how to play the game. Kids from the not wealthy areas learn how to be in a play, but they don't learn how to buy stocks and invest and save and set financial priorities. Our school system should be where you learn the skills to survive in the world as it exists. You want to change the world, fine. You want to be socialist as opposed to capitalist, so be it. But right now, we are a capitalist society. You want to get ahead? You want generational wealth? You want economic equality? You have to teach kids these basic skills. To do that, it starts with small decisions. And that small decision I would start with is increase the arts and theater on the town side and let the Board of Ed, if not decrease it, keep it same and increase financial literacy. Teach them, and I'm not talking about how to balance a checkbook. I haven't balanced a checkbook in 15 years. Everybody use that as an example. I'm talking about balancing a checkbook or how to write one or opening a bank account. I'm talking about how to invest. What is a PE ratio? I don't know how many of my viewers know what a PE ratio is, but anybody who's bought a stock knows what a PE ratio is. Here's what's happening financially in this country, and we're going to talk a lot about unions today later on as we get to regionalization. But you have a ton of people who have zero idea where their retirement funds come from. A ton of people have no idea what a 401k means. Unions, have served an amazing purpose throughout time. I don't know if it's the same level now, but it certainly did in getting labor laws changed, all those sort of things for years, creating the middle class for years. But it also created a whole generation, multiple generations of people who have no idea where their pension comes from. No idea of the finance behind it, that they're putting money into an account and getting far more money back because it was invested. So they don't know how to invest. Kids getting out of high school don't know how to invest. So who are the people that get ahead? The people that get ahead are the people that are starting off with money and have parents that know this stuff, that prioritize this stuff. You want equality, then you want economic equality. So I don't care what color you are. When you have money, you have power. That's the way the world works. We live in a capitalist society. So I know I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but the reason is this. If I can support the town pushing arts, if I can support the town pushing theater, then the pressure is not on the Board of Ed to do that. And the pressure could be on the Board of Ed to focus on financial literacy, the things people need to really get a chance and a foothold to build economic wealth, financial wealth in the real world. I know there's comments coming on this. Maria, the classes you speak of are the first ones that are cut when there's a budget issue. I agree. So a budget issue is always the same nonsense, right? So they're always going to choose things that are going to get parents the most emotional. So if you go and say, so there's two things people always start cutting: plays, theater, arts, the art classes, music classes, or pay to play. We're going to charge more to play sports. Because those, and I guarantee you this, if I said tomorrow, Branford should cut an English class, 5 people would be like, whatever. 5 people would be like, oh my God, don't do that. The rest of people, whatever. If I said pay to play or cut the theater program at the high school, holy God, World War III would happen. Our priorities are off. What I'd like to see happen is the arts aspect of it be moved to the town. Let's see a focus by town employees on theater. And this is what the town is doing. Putting Colin in that position, having that position, doing more of those things makes sense. Let the schools not have to deal with the emotional blowback of increasing not theater, but financial literacy. 1,000 parents are not going to show up and say, please teach my kids how to read a corporate earnings report. No one's going to do that. 1,000 parents are not going to show up and say, how come my kids don't know how to read a quarterly earnings report, what a P/E ratio is, understanding forward earnings, what a stock dividend is. No one's going to rally for that, but it's vital. And the fact that we have kids graduating high school, hell, we have kids graduating college that don't know what a mutual fund is. How's that possible? I want our school districts doing that. And I want the arts and that theater and that increase of thing our kids need as well. I'm not diminishing the need for that. Let's put it on the town side. And if we can handle it better on the town side, increase those, then it's year round. We don't have to worry about the schools being open. We could be part of day camps. I have been to some of these camps. I've seen some of these productions. He does a phenomenal job. And I shouldn't say him because we don't want to add positions just for one person. I'm advocating for this position going from part-time to full-time. If you have an email and you know your RTM representatives, email them. Please support. I'll give you the name one more time. The name of this position is the Arts, Culture, and Special Projects Coordinator. I very much support this going from part-time to full-time. I think you should as well, and let your representatives know. As is, the budget's fine. There's be some small changes. You're going to have the normal politics involved. Brockett's going to throw a little fix. That's what he does. But the budget's fine. Your mill rate's going to be, I think, still in the 29 range, which is lower than anybody around us. And considering we also have trash pickup and sewers, which many other towns don't, you have an incredible value living in Branford. No question about it. So I support that project. And it's funny how life is made up of all these small decisions. I want to see financial literacy be a focus in high school. I want to see it be a focus earlier than that, but especially in high school. But that takes other smaller decisions down the road that have to happen. We're going to get back to that in a second because there's a bill Sean Scanlon's working on on regionalizing school districts, not school districts, but towns, and regionalizing services. And it will be fairly unsuccessful unless unions are involved. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I do want to first talk about, I just saw the video from this unfortunate Daunte Wright thing. I'm going to read a little bit of it here and we'll talk about it. It is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet. It appears to me, from what I viewed from the officer's reaction and distress immediately after, this was an accidental discharge that resulted in the tragic death of Mr. Wright. So I saw the video. This is a description of the video. I'll read it. And if you're wondering, this is what happened last night or in the early morning hours, about like 10 minutes from the courthouse where the other major trial is taking place right now. So it's just amazing that this is happening. The fatal encounter happened just before 2 p.m. local time on Sunday when Brooklyn Center, Minneapolis, pulled over Daunte Wright after noticing his car had expired tags, Gannon said. Wright's girlfriend was in the passenger seat, according to his mother. When police discovered he had an outstanding arrest warrant, the officers attempted arrest. Police did not immediately have details about what the warrant was for. The video clip shown Monday began as the officer wearing the camera arrived on the scene of the traffic stop already underway. The video shows another officer speaking to Wright, who exited the white Buick sedan and turned around to be handcuffed. As the other officer began to handcuff him, Wright appeared to pull his hands away and duck back into the car. As the first officer attempted to restrain Wright, the officer wearing the body camera ran toward the open door and drew her handgun. It was a female officer. She yelled "taser" 3 times, then fired a shot. Immediately afterwards, she said, "Holy shit, I just shot him," as the car drove away. And the car hit another car. Obviously, he passed away. So I'm not sure how this video got out so quickly, but in any event, that is what I saw in the video. It's on YouTube. You're watching, obviously, somebody get shot if you do watch it, so you could watch that with your own discretion. It appears to me he pulls away from the officer and jumps back in the car and starts to drive. She yells 3 times, "I'm going to tase you," and then shoots. What do you do when someone pulls the wrong item? The irony of this is ridiculous that this happened in this case. It's just crazy. The second she fired, you said, "Oh shit, I think I shot him." Like she knew that she had no intention of shooting somebody. She thought she was tasering somebody. And there's riots and they break into stores and that sort of thing again. But this is one of those issues where what is the right answer here? Can we expect cops to be perfect all the time? Of tens of thousands of stops, are they going to be perfect all the time? No. And just like doctors, there's going to be times that those mistakes cost lives when you're dealing with lives. Is there something that can be done to change this? Do we take firearms away from cops, which I will certainly not advocate for? And so the question is, I get the anger, but this is one of those situations where you can kind of understand every side of this. This woman, who was described as a senior officer, this is not a young cop, likely had no intention of shooting this person, grabbed the wrong thing, yelled "taser" 3 times. The second the shot was fired, realized she made a mistake. You get the anger, but is this a race-related thing? I don't want to play that card where, well, listen, this is a guy who was a bad actor, right? He had an arrest warrant already out. He pulled away from the cop. He was out of the car, put his hand behind his back. For some reason, they didn't cuff him quickly. So it looked like the officer had a hard time with the cuffs. The other officer walks up. The guy jumps in the car, starts it. She goes, "I have a taser, I have a taser, I have a taser," and then shoots him. Bad actor, yeah. Of course, nobody deserves to die in that situation. But what do you do? What is the right answer? And sometimes as a society, we just have to realize this is just one of the shit things that happens. This isn't about race. There was no desire to kill the person because they were black or white or blue or whatever. It was an honest mistake. It was a terrible location for it to happen. Just like you got to be kidding me kind of moment. How do we respond to this? we have to, as members of a society, realize there's going to be mistakes. There are doctors that make mistakes that cost lives. There's a price to pay for that. There's insurance that pays out a fiscal number for that. Nothing makes up for the loss of a family member. But this is just kind of something that happens. And then if people overreact and start marching in the streets and bashing property, what if somebody dies from that? How do you respond to that? They're getting angry, jumping on the race car. So this amazing thing, one of the things we have to come to realize in all of these situations is there are always going to be potential situations where no one's exactly wrong. It's just shit. It's just a convergence of events and mistakes and accidents because of human error. Why did he get back in the car? Maybe he was a 20-year-old kid. He was just nervous as hell. Was he trying to escape something? He was already caught. Maybe he just freaked out and jumped back in the car. Just a kid being a kid. And she made a mistake and pulled the wrong thing. It's amazing, I read 4 or 5 articles about this before I came on today. And do we realize there doesn't always have to be a right and a wrong? Sometimes just shit happens. And this might be one of those circumstances. I'm just amazed by that this happened so close to the other trial. Like, what are the odds of that? It's just crazy. Before we go on to regionalization, we'll read some of these comments. Mary, what about the case in Virginia where the Army member is suing for $1 million after being pepper sprayed and taunted with electric chair? Okay, I don't know that circumstance. One thing about that they're suing for $1 million, that doesn't mean anything. They put a number there often just to get publicity. It doesn't really mean much. You can't generally sue for a specific amount. You're going to sue for damages, and the jury will determine that. So an attorney will throw a number in there to get attention. Whether they're suing for $1 or $100 million really is irrelevant. Maria, compound interest. You're right about compound interest. Kids don't know compound interest. The value of saving money. You can go on, just Google investment calculator and play a game. Find some kid in your life, 15 years of age or under, and go on the computer and Google the words investment calculator and find. Dave Ramsey has a good one. And on that calculator, will tell you how much money you have to start with. And just for the hell of it, with that kid, how much does he have saved? Oh, we have $500 saved. Put that in there. How much can you save a month? And put $20 in there. Or just for the hell of it, with a 15-year-old kid. And how much compound interest can we say? We're going to get 7% interest a year, which is low, but so be it. For the market, 7%. Just play this game with a 15-year-old. And show them what happens when they save every month. And the total amount of money they have is significantly more than the money they actually put in there. This is what unions don't realize. The union members. We want our pension. We worked hard for our pension. You didn't work hard for your pension. You worked hard for a portion of your pension. But it made money in the market. Made money on Wall Street, that evil bastard Wall Street that you're marching against and complaining about. They provided far more money than you put in. And so we have a whole generation of people who don't understand the correlation between their retirement and Wall Street. They view themselves as Main Street. We're not part of that. The unions that work for the state. Oh my God, I can't believe these corporations don't pay taxes. Yeah, Amazon didn't pay taxes for many years. They reinvested their profits. That's true. You know who else made money on Amazon? Every union in the goddamn world. Because they're all invested in Amazon. So Bernie Sanders can yell about corporations not paying taxes, but those corporations not paying taxes are showing earnings and their stock prices going up, and it's in every single one of those pensions, in every single one of those unions. But we have generations of people who do not understand the correlation. They don't get it. And instead of learning it when they're 30 or 40 or 50, they should be learning it when they're 14. They should be learning how to save money when they're young. Before they get that first job at 15. At 15 is the age you can work. Before you start that first job, you should be taught how to save money, how to prioritize, how to handle debt, and what compound interest and savings and a basics, what happens in the stock market when you buy a stock. That has to be taught earlier. If you want equality, and I will tie this to racism, It's economic. This whole issue with the housing authority crap. Black people can only live in poor neighborhoods. They can't get ahead. You know what? Teach them financial literacy. There are stories all over the place of people who had nothing that learned how to save. It's a simple process. The people who sit middle class or lower work for a living. They work for money. The people who get above that, their money works for them. If you have a pension right now, your money's working for you. Your money that you saved is worked to return money. If you have a 401k, the money you saved is working to return money. The people that you know that are richer get to that point earlier in life. And they could return money in the stock market. They could do it by buying property. They could do a bunch of things they can do where the money that they've saved, the $100,000 they've saved over their career or $200,000, somehow becomes $500,000 or $600,000 because their money is working for them. That's what we have to teach people. And that's what our Board of Ed should be pushing for. That's what our education department should be. Let's get the theater over the town side. Parks and Rec can handle the theater. Let's get them promoting more of those things. Let the education budget actually be the skills that people need to go live in the real world and get ahead and build wealth. We talk about systemic racism. There could be systemic wealth if we start teaching it. So there's a law out there that's being proposed by Sean Scanlon. And it's not the first one of this kind, and it's about regionalization. And the thought process is Connecticut is too dependent on property tax. So how do we get property tax down? Well, if you go to many states, especially in the South, they don't necessarily have each town. They have governance by county. Their police department may be a county police department. Their fire department may be run by a county fire department. So, or a Board of Ed may be more county or more regionalized. And so you save money on the number of police chiefs and principals and superintendents and all these high-level positions you can save money on by having one group of management. Corporations do this all the time. They combine and save money. But how do you get a state like Connecticut, which is basically 169 different fiefdoms, different small towns, who takes pride in being a bunch of small towns, to say, let's work together? So what Sean Scanlon has said is a few aspects here. One is, let's cap property tax increases at 2.5%. The real reason for that is if people have a tax increase they want larger than that, it may force them to try to regionalize. The second aspect of this law is to say the state will pay you some of the money that you would see the benefits of or the costs of regionalizing if these two towns regionalize. So, two boards of ed regionalize, the state says we'll pay 10% of your education if you've regionalized and shown significant savings. So in the article in the Connecticut Mirror and in the law and in all the discussions from Sean and all the other debates that have happened, one word you never hear: unions. Because these bills are dead on arrival without unions. The second you talk about regionalizing, the second you talk about combining boards of ed or police departments or fire departments, unions get involved. Unions do not want to lose positions. So as a Democrat, if you're Sean Scanlon and you really genuinely want to see regionalization, you realize that's a way to save money. The money you're going to save is in personnel. That means you cannot have the discussion without having unions at the table. You can't do it. They weren't even discussed in the article. And so you can pass this law, and somebody's going to say it's a great idea. And if towns decide on their own, if Branford goes to North Branford and says, let's become one town, and then it's never going to happen because the unions would go nuts. There was a circumstance only, I would say, 2-3 years ago where there was discussion about putting the dispatch centers for North Branford and Branford together. And you would end up losing a job or two, maybe down the road, what have you. And it's, they went crazy. It was just nuts. North Branford fought it because North Branford would have lost their dispatch center. Branford could handle the whole thing. Makes sense. It would have saved money. It would have been better for everybody. But they went crazy. You will not get regionalization. You will not get towns to work together, no matter what the financial incentive is, until you get unions to the table. And this is not the first person that has tried this bill. Lonnie Reed, back in 2011, 2012, was advocating for a very similar bill. It didn't offer, I don't know if it offered direct financial incentives, but it made it easier for towns to regionalize, and nobody responds to it. Because you will have a fight on your hands with every union, and nobody wants that. If Sean really wants this, if our state delegation really wants this, they have to get unions to the table. It's the only way. All right, so look at some of the comments here. Christopher, plenty of programs available outside the school system to teach groups of young people financial literacy. I agree with you. Here's the problem with that. The people who get access to those programs, generally the people with money. There is nothing, if we're going to send kids to school and we realize that we're in a capitalist society that requires learning financial literacy, that should be one of the key things they walk out with, understanding that. At the end of the day, we can't just allow these additional programs to people that can afford either the time or the money to get to those additional programs. It has to be part of our curriculum in the school system. It has to be a primary part of it. Our teachers and our administrators that are coming up with the curriculum have to say to themselves, I want my kid to be able to get out of this knowing, okay, The Great Gatsby's great. And they read all these, the Prince Caspian books, whatever the hell books they're reading or whatever is popular today. They know all that stuff, but what they also know? How to buy a stock. What compound interest is. What support is on a stock. And what a P ratio is. And what it was trading at in the past. What it means to save. And they should start that before people are the age to work, which is 15. So by 13 or 14 years old, we have to have our initial classes detailing to kids the importance of saving money. Saving money is a choice. Every single dime you spend is a choice. When you buy a stick of gum, you have chosen to purchase money, use your asset, cash, for a stick of gum as opposed to saving it or as some other item. That's a choice you've made. Saving and getting ahead and economic equality is a choice. It's a series of tiny, tiny choices made every single day by people. Some people choose the right ones and they build wealth. Some people choose poor ones and they build nothing. And then they get angry. And because they have nothing, they yell about, we're not getting enough from corporations or our wages aren't high enough and that sort of thing. Instead of saying, I didn't make all these small changes that I could have made. Tiny changes that don't even change your life much to start saving money and get ahead. And you do that generationally, you will have economic equality. You will have everybody with the same opportunity to get ahead the same way. Listen, I didn't inherit anything. There's people my age group that are going to inherit a ton from their parents. What happened? We still have an obligation to make smart decisions. I had to learn this on my own because it wasn't taught in a school district. If we start teaching kids at a young age these very basic financial principles, how capitalism works, how wealth works, how to save, what it leads to at a young age, before they start working, they could start saving at that summer job at Karen's Corner, the local grocery store. And go on that investment calculator site. Go to Dave Ramsey. Just do investment calculator Dave Ramsey in your search bar. It'll come up. And see what happens if you're 15 years old and you start saving $50 a month. We'll do it now. Dave Ramsey. I just Googled investment calculator Dave Ramsey. Open it up. Current age, we'll say 15 years old. Retire at 67. We'll say 62 because we want to be aggressive, right? How much do you have to save for retirement? $0. How much can you contribute monthly? $50. What do you think your annual return would be? Just put 7% in there. Calculate. Right now, at 15, they start a job at Taco Bell. They save $50 a month for the rest of their lives. $50 a month. Everybody can afford $50 a month. You retire. What's the number here? $219,000. Now do some research. A large amount of people do not have $219,000 to retire. That's your savings. Then your Social Security kicks in. Then you have a decent retirement. The difference between being broke and having some money is just saving at a young age. We don't teach it. So we talk about equality or the lack of equality, the lack of opportunity. The opportunity is there. Nobody cares what color you are when you buy a stock. No one gives a shit. I'm on TD Ameritrade, Robinhood, all those, they don't care if you're black, white, or green. Money's in one color. We're not teaching our kids how to partake in the society that we're sending them out into. And that's the problem. Okay, let's read some of these comments. Tracy, my father-in-law sat each of my kids down and taught them how compound interest, not let them go until they could calculate it. I love your father-in-law. And open up that calculator. Show them what happens when you start saving money early. It's amazing. Your life is different. You have choices in your life. You can, when you have that money saved, when you start buying property, when you make investments, you can quit your job and try a new job, start a new career, take new risks that you can't do when you're dependent on a paycheck every week. You want racial equality? Get economic equality. You want affordable housing? Teach people everywhere how to partake in the capitalist system. That's how it happens. And for some reason, it's not the priority of our education system at a young enough age. It's not a priority at all, but it's certainly not a priority at a young enough age. These are things kids need to know early, before they get their first paycheck, before they get that first job working at McDonald's or the grocery store or cutting grass. Combining regionalizing 911 centers was discussed 10 years ago as popular in northern and western Connecticut. It should have been done here, no question about it. Am I missing some of these comments? Yeah, Jennifer, the need to know how to survive in the world today. That's true. Michael, balancing a checkbook is still important for day-to-day budgeting, bill paying, and managing household. Yeah, I agree. Listen, I haven't physically opened a checkbook in years, but yes, you have to know how much money you have, that sort of thing. Maria, the classes you speak of are the first ones that are cut when there's a budget issue. That's true. People are begging for Spanish in elementary. Actually, they are sponges at that age. Let's give it to them. Spanish makes a lot of sense. Actually, economically, Spanish makes a lot of sense. So does Chinese, for that matter. Compound interest, Virginia case. Carlos, it's hard to illustrate compound interest to a kid who makes a penny a month in interest on her savings account. Yeah, okay, I agree. But when that child is 15 years old and they get their first part-time job, they should know it by then. Period. And yes, savings accounts pay nothing right now. No question about it. But there's nothing stopping a parent from opening an investment account. You know, I talk to some parents who have young kids, and what I say is open up Disney stock information. Kids can tell you about Snapchat or Facebook stock, or they can't tell about stock, but they know the companies. Talk to them about corporations and stocks and companies they'll understand. I'm not telling them to buy. I have in my portfolio, I have Palantir. I have stocks that they would never know. Don't buy stocks they would never know. Buy stocks they'll know. That way, when they see Disney in the headlines, they get excited about it. When they all know Lululemon now. That stock went crazy. They certainly know Amazon. So sit down with them when they get their basic stock information, basic investment information, basic compound interest information. Talk to them about what a stock is, ownership in a corporation. How does that corporation give you information about which to make a decision? What is a dividend? Does the average person know the difference between a regular stock and a dividend stock? I don't think so. Well, if we could teach those kids at a young age what that is, I've seen many kids that I've worked with and helped set up accounts, and especially people in their early 20s that, how do I set this up? And how do I do Robinhood? And how do I do this? By the first week, they're like, oh, there goes $40. By 3 or 4 months down the road, when it's $800, they are thrilled. They're excited to watch it grow. They don't even want to spend it. They just want to make it grow. And they think, can I save more? Can I put more in there? That's what we have to get back to. The same level of excitement that we see on theater night at the high school, and there's energy. We want those kids to have that level of excitement about saving and investing. That's how you get economic equality. Because if you have that class, I don't care if you live in a trailer park or a mansion in Pine Orchard or Manhattan, whatever it is, you're learning the same information. You can go get the same job at Taco Bell and save the same amount of money. You can do that. No one cares what color you are. Right now, we're not doing it. Right now, we're not teaching these kids at the right age the information they need to know to be productive, to compete, and get equal opportunity in the real world. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for joining us. We had a pretty good, thank you for the comments are always a key part, because then I can go back and forth and get questions or what have you. And I appreciate many of the ideas that came in today. I will be back on tomorrow at 4 o'clock. I hope you all have an amazing night. Good night.